වීව එකතුණු උකුතේ එකක
රස උපරිමයි.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Thursday the 2nd of February 2023. Soon, Paris Club countries to provide IMF with debt reassurances needed by Sri Lanka to procure EFF package. Outside the box, Russia proposes the construction of a small nuclear power plant to strengthen Sri Lanka's power generation.
They have very good and rich experience. Please rely on us.
Dire consequences. Chief prelates of the Trisex urged President Ranil Wickremesinghe not to implement the 13th Amendment, saying national sovereignty and security, territorial integrity will be compromised. Land release. Around 108.893 acres of land in Jaffna under custody of security forces to be released tomorrow.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. From Studio 24 in Colombo.
Very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. New top story for tonight, international media has now reported that members of the Paris Club would soon provide the International Monetary Fund with debt assurances that Sri Lanka is looking to receive in order to be provided with the $2.9 billion bailout package. It is also reported that the Paris Club is currently reaching out to other non-Paris Club members apart from China to get assurances. Reuters reported that the Paris Club of creditor nations are ready to provide financing assurances to Sri Lanka, a key step needed to unlock a $2.9 billion bailout by the International Monetary Fund. The informal group of bilateral lenders is soon set to announce its support to the crisis-hit nation on a debt overhaul, said one of the people speaking to Reuters, who asked not to be named because talks are private. Another source said the informal group is currently reaching out to other non-Paris Club besides China on financing assurances, but did not provide any further details. China and India, both non-Paris Club members, are the top bilateral lenders. So far, India and China have provided the IMF with debt reassurances last month. India committed to help ease the debt burden of neighbour Sri Lanka as part of the IMF program. And China's Exim Bank offered a 2-year moratorium in a letter sent to the island nation in January. Now, in the meantime, Russian ambassador in Colombo, Levan Jagarian, says that Russia proposed the construction of a 110-megawatt nuclear power plant in Sri Lanka to further strengthen power generation in the island nation. Speaking to Indivari Amwata at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Jagarian said the construction of the plant will be beneficiary to Sri Lanka and will help benefit foreign exchange and otherwise spent on oil and coal imports.
Oil, diesel, petrol, crude oil. Now, this is something that we have been trying to manage given the fuel crisis. We know that India is importing cheap Russian crude to the country, and the sanctions don't seem to bother them. So how do we work this out for Sri Lanka?
We cooperating with India quite well. We export oil. We are not talking about the price. You know that the Western countries, European Union and Americans decided to establish a sort of cap for oil prices. Of course, for us, it's unacceptable. And my president have signed a decree that we wouldn't provide oil for the countries who accept this oil prices cap. And as to
$60, if I'm
yes,
not
per
mistaken.
barrel, $60 per barrel. And of course, it depends on the oil market, but no limits. We are ready to continue it. As to Sri Lanka, of course, before there were some supplies of coal and oil, but it depends on private companies, not state-owned companies. If they're interested, they can do the job. But we had another idea, another proposal. If you allow me, I will continue. I will say in public. We have proposed to build here a small nuclear power plant with a capacity of 110 megawatts, at least 2 blocks, 55 plus 55. We can produce much more, 2, 4, 6, it depends on some technical issues. And here we have presented, me personally, our ideas, our proposals in the written form. And if Sri Lankan side of government, if they agree with our proposals, it will pave the way for the visit of our high-ranking delegation from Rosatom, as they can start negotiations here. Now we are waiting for response of our Lankan friends. A few days ago, I read in one of your newspapers, it was an article against this Russian proposal. It was signed by some Lankans who live in UK. But I would like to say in public that India, for years and years, they have very good and very useful cooperation with Russian Federation. We just completed 2 blocks, if I'm not mistaken, in Tamil Nadu state.
The nuclear plant.
Yes, Kudankalam. And also we continue to cooperate in this regard with Bangladesh, Rupur. There are a lot of Russian specialists working both in Kudamkalam and in Rupur. And I told my friends, you can go there and to ask Bangladeshi colleagues, Indian colleagues about details of their cooperation with the Russian Federation. If we are able to complete this project, it will be very useful for your country. You will save a lot of oil, coal, and in terms of ecology, it's also very important.
What is Russia's role here? Is it technological know-how and transfer?
Transfer, technology, and specialists who work on the site and give their know-how, knowledge to their foreign partners. And also very important in terms of advanced technology here. What about details? It's up to, if our delegation comes here, if they can start negotiations with Lankan partners in this regard, just to discuss everything, technical, financial, and other issues.
Concerns will be raised by Sri Lanka's closest neighbor, India, and other nations as well. So will Russia want to be amidst all these concerns?
Why India should raise its concerns? Because they cooperate themselves with us, as I mentioned, Kudam Kalam. They cooperate for a long period.
But India has always been concerned about their security, regional security. Even recently with a ship vessel from China, India was quite concerned about its presence in Sri Lankan waters.
It's the issue between China and India for well-known reasons. But once again, both are friendly countries for us. As to Russia, we are ready to cooperate with Sri Lanka, and Sri Lankan government, if they have some other options and ideas, we can discuss it. But I don't see any reason for any concerns, because once again, we have good cooperation with India and with Bangladesh. What are the concerns? When you said about some other countries, I understand which countries are concerned. We have many nuclear power plants in the Russian Federation. They have very good and rich experience. Please rely on us.
Now around 108.893 acres of land in North Valikamam in Jaffna, which was under the custody of security forces during the civil war, are expected to be released and handed over to 197 families tomorrow. According to the President's Media Division, President Ranil Wickremesinghe has instructed the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing, which is in charge of the resettlement process, to immediately assist the 197 families to be resettled.
In a statement, President's Media Division said around 108 acres of land in North Valikamam in Jaffna, which was under the custody of security forces during the civil war, will be released and handed over to 197 families tomorrow. The PMD said prior to the 75th independence celebrations on the 4th of February, the relevant landowners were identified through a transparent process for this land release program, which was implemented under the full supervision of the security forces in fulfillment of President Ranil Wickremesinghe's promise to release the lands in the north and hand them over to their rightful owners prior to the 75th anniversary of independence. According to the program, 5 plots occupied by the Sri Lanka Army and another plot occupied by the Sri Lanka Navy are to be handed over to the people. Out of these lands, 13 acres of government-owned land in the North Palali area will be distributed among 75 families who were displaced by the war and are still housed in 9 camps at Point Pedro. The town hall building located in the liberated area will be handed over to the Valikamam North Pradeshia Sabha. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has instructed the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing, which is in charge of the resettlement process, to immediately provide assistance to 197 families to be resettled.
Now, chief prelates of the sect urged President Ranil Wickremesinghe not to implement the 13th Amendment, stating that it can affect the country's sovereignty, territorial integrity and national security by providing more space for separatism. In a letter to the President to express their objection, the chief prelates said that the implementation of such constitutional amendments that can harm the autonomy of the central government will result in a massive public displeasure. Recently, President Ranil Wickremesinghe said he will empower the 13th Amendment to the Constitution and added that the Cabinet is in agreement with its implementation. He stated that the 13th Amendment will be implemented in full unless it is decided by the party leaders as to whether or not the amendment should be abolished. In response to President Vikram Singh's statement, chief prelates of the tri-sects wrote to the president expressing their objection towards the decision. They noted that the statement made by him on the implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution through his executive powers has led to a confusion within the country. They say that the implementation of the 13th Amendment will create more space for separatism following the separation of police and land powers through the provincial councils. The chief prelates of the tri-sects added that the former presidents refrained from implementing this legislation due to the harmful aspects of it and the confusions that can arise following its implementation. They went on to say that the implementation of such constitutional amendments that can harm the autonomy of the central government will result in a massive public displeasure. The chief prelates urged the president not to implement the 13th Amendment due to its negative impacts towards the country's sovereignty, territorial integrity and national security. Now, the Ceylon Electricity Board made an undertaking before the Supreme Court today to not disrupt power supply until tomorrow. The CB made this pledge before the Supreme Court after it called for the case filed by the Human Rights Commission to Sri Lanka regarding the violation of the agreement to not interrupt power until the A-level exam has concluded. The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka filed a contempt of court against the Power and Energy Ministry Secretary, the Ceylon Electricity Board Chairman and the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation Chairman over their failure to abide by the agreement reached at a recent meeting to provide uninterrupted power supply until the advanced level examination concludes on the 17th of February. The case was taken up today before the Supreme Court judge bench comprising Preeti Padman Suresana, Yasantha Kodagoda and Shiran Gunaratna this morning. The Supreme Court during the course of the day then announced that the case will be taken up tomorrow. With this being the case, the CB made an undertaking before the court today that there will be no power cuts until the case is taken up before the Supreme Court tomorrow. The Public Utilities Commission in the meantime announced that they would not allow the CB to announce any power cuts until the A-level examination concludes. Chairman of the PUCSL Janaka Ratnayaka stated that if the CB imposed any power cuts overlooking the need to obtain approval from them, this would be considered illegal. The PUCSL believes that the imposition of power cuts during this period violates the fundamental rights of over 331,000 students sitting for the advanced level examinations. Welcome back. Now, leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Sajith Premadasa, says that his party negotiates with the International Monetary Fund. It would be to come up with an agreement that would not hurt the people, but rather alleviate them from the current hardships.
A public rally was held today by the Samagi Jana Balawegaya in Matale. Former State Minister Sujiva Senasinghe, who was appointed as the new election campaign secretary of Samagi Jana Balawegaya, also joined this public rally for the first time.
මම දේශපාලනේ සමුගෙන හිටියේ. මේ වේදිකාවට එන්න ප්‍රධාන හේතුව මේ ගෝඨාභය වගේම බිල්ලෙක් ආපහු මැවෙනවා. අනුර කුමාර දිසානායක. කරන්න බැරි පොරොන්දු දීලා මිනිස්සු අවුස්සලා ගෝඨාභය කරපු දේම නැවත කරගෙන එනවා ජීවිතේ. මේක විශාල රටට හානියක් සහෝදරයනි. නැවත අපිට මේ වලේ වැටෙන්න බෑ. වැඩ පෙන්නලා තියෙන පුද්ගලෙක් තමයි අපේ මේ සදිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්තයා. එතුමා බස් බෙදනවා කියලා එතුමාට ගහනවා. නිකන් හිතලා බලන්න සහෝදරනි බස් එකක් ₹150යි. ₹150ක් එතුමාට එකතු කරන්න පුළුවන් දවස් දෙකක් තුනක් යනකොට මොකද ඒ ව්‍යාපාරික විශ්වාස කරනවා මෙතුමා පිරිසුදුයි JP ගේ ව්‍යාපෘතියක් කරන රස්සාවක් කරන එක්කෙනෙක් පුළුවන් නම් කියන්න මම මේක කරා කියලා. එහෙම පුද්ගලෙක් JP ගේ නෑ සහෝදර.
අවංකව හිතලා බලන්න රට පත්වී තිබෙන අගහදෙන් කොහොමද ගොඩෙන්නේ? එකම එක විසඳුමයි තියෙන්නේ. බංකොලොත් අපේ රටට සල්ලි අවශ්‍යයි. මුදල් නැතුව මොනවක්වත් කරන්නට බෑ. සංවර්ධන වැඩෝ ටික කොතනද ඉන්නේ? ඔය ප්‍රශ්නෙට උත්තරේ තමයි අවශ්‍ය. අපි සූදානම් රට දෑ වෙනුවෙන් ඒ කරන්න තියෙන උපරිම කැපකිරීම කරන්න. හැම කොට්ටාසයක්ම විපතට පත් වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ මේ රජයේ අන්ත දූෂිත බදු සූත්‍රය නිසා. අපිත් සාකච්ඡා කරනවා IMF එකත් එක්ක. හැබැයි අපි IMF එකත් එක්ක එකඟතාවයකට එන්නේ මිනිස්සු මරන්න නෙමෙයි මිනිස්සුන්ව ජීවත් කරවන්නේ.
The Minister of Ports and Shipping, Nimal Siripal de Silva, instructed the ministry officials to look into the possibility of selling the scrap of sunken and capsized ships within Sri Lankan waters that lack an archaeological value in a bid to earn additional revenue to the government. During a meeting at the Ministry of Ports and Shipping, the subject minister also highlighted the importance of developing some of the sites within sunken ships as tourist attractions. due to the existence of heavy demand for ocean exploration.
A special discussion was held at the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Aviation today to discuss on maximizing revenue generation from sunken and derelict vessels. Instructions were issued to make maximum benefit from these vessels to the local economy and to preserve them, taking its archaeological importance into account. During discussions, it was revealed that as many as 47 vessels have sunk and capsized in Sri Lanka's territorial waters, and that a large number of tourists are interested in exploring the sites of sunken vessels in local waters, which is currently facilitated by a number of international ocean exploration and diving teams. Accordingly, the subject minister Nimal Siripala de Silva instructed for the implementation of a suitable process in combination with the Ministry of Tourism, Sri Lanka Navy and private tour and travel companies to facilitate the program. At the discussions, it was decided to salvage any vessels with no archaeological value at these sites and sell the scrap and credit revenue to the government account. It was also revealed in discussions that based on maritime law, if rights over a sunken ship were not presented within a period of 1 year, the ownership of the ship would fall on to the government that owned the oceanic territory and that there exists no impediment to scrapping for sale of the ship. Accordingly, the minister ordered relevant officials to look into 6 of such vessels anchored at Colombo, Galle and Trincomalee ports for more than 6 years and consider expediting legal process to obtain the maximum revenue to Sri Lanka Ports Authority out of these abandoned vessels.
Now, Sri Lankan shares rose to its highest close in more than 3.5 months as news on Paris Club members' willingness for financial assurances boosted sentiment. The all share price index ended stronger at 0.81% to 9,022.38. The more liquid index S&P SL 20 edged up by 0.47% to 2,812.75. The market turnover was 1.8 billion rupees today, in line with this year's daily average, however less than 2022's average turnover of 2.9 billion rupees. The bourse saw a net foreign inflow of 47 million rupees, extending the net offshore buying to 660 million rupees so far this year. Capital goods sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, while the energy sector was the second highest contributor. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee fared against other major currencies in the world. Now, oil prices were steady today as looming sanctions on Russian oil products added uncertainty over supply, but the dollar lost value in a boost to the oil trade. Brent crude futures fell by 18 cents to $82.66 a barrel, while the WTI US crude futures lost 3 cents to $76.38. Both benchmarks plunged more than 3% overnight after US government data showed a large build in oil stocks. A European Union ban on Russian refined products is set to take effect on the 5th of February, potentially dealing a blow to global supply. EU countries will seek a deal tomorrow in a European Commission proposal to set price caps on Russian oil products after postponing a decision on Wednesday because of divisions among member states, diplomats said. The European Commission proposed last week that from the 5th of February, the EU apply a price cap of $100 on a barrel of premium Russian oil products such as diesel and a 45 per barrel cap on discounted products such as fuel oil. And that's all the news we have for this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. And pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.